What can we do? What can we proactively do to take charge of our lives and reclaim the life of our dreams?
Welcome to your Career Revolution podcast, the place where you will learn how to reimagine and reclaim the life of your dreams. I am your host, Courtney Dyksterhouse, and I am joined by Tamara Loring, who is the Chief of Brand Ideology at the Entrepreneur Source, and Marissa Frois, the CEO at the Entrepreneur Source. Both of these women, I could talk about this for days. They have such a deep passion to see you live out your self-sufficient dreams. So, ladies, thank you once again for joining me for this final episode.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, we know that this podcast, it is based on the book, Your Career Revolution. And over the past 6 episodes, we have been breaking down this book chapter by chapter. So by the end, you'd be able to start experiencing success and turn your dreams into a reality. Yes, your dreams can become a reality. They are living, breathing proof of that. So if you haven't listened to the first 6 episodes, go back, listen to those before diving in with us today. Well, this might be the last episode in the series, but in many ways, this is just the beginning. By now, you've learned how to discover your path to your desired income, lifestyle, wealth, equity, and your You 2.0. You've been able to get a grasp of what's involved with the Entrepreneur Source journey of discovery. And today, we are going to show you what it is like to go through this journey from beginning to end with some fun real life examples. So I know that I gave a 1-sentence recap of what we've covered in the last 6 episodes, but I mean, that really just cannot do it justice. So Tamara, I would love for you to go a little deeper and remind us of the journey that we've been on in the series.
Thank you so much, Courtney. And yes, I would love to. In our first few episodes, we spoke about why there is a revolution brewing. We introduced you to the concept of the battered career and the battered investor syndrome. And we know that so many of you could identify. Are you part of the 75% of the adult population that keeps on thinking, goodness, there certainly has to be a better way? If you are not alone. Then we pivoted and we said, okay, how can we now start to reimagine and reclaim our future, right? Because we don't want our past to determine our future. If there's an agitation, what can we do about it? And we know that there are some of those pesky F words and those myths that come in the way that prevent us from moving forward. They're merely stumbling blocks. Now we're at the point where we say, okay, what can we do? What can we proactively do to take charge of our lives and reclaim the life of our dreams? What can we do to make our dreams that reality?
Oh, I love that. Well, we're going to just get more into that and answer that question more thoroughly today. So, my question for you as we start this episode is there a specific age group that benefits the most from going on this journey of discovery and working with a coach?
Great question, Courtney. Earlier in our podcast series, we talked about misconceptions or myths when it came to franchising, for example. And I think another misconception is that exploring your career 2.0 with a coach is only meant for those people maybe who have struggled way too long in corporate America, maybe suffering from the battered career syndrome, and therefore are in need of a coach. But the fact is, anyone from Gen Zers to boomers can benefit from coaching. There really isn't a perfect age or a perfect person. As long as you're willing to invest a little bit of time and keep an open mind, then we are fully committed to bringing you through a fantastic journey of discovery. And in fact, in the book, we highlight 5 real client success stories, all from very different backgrounds. And I figured I would quickly just talk about each of those stories today, since earlier you said we'd be talking about some real life examples. So
Yes.
the first individual that we highlight in the book is Kevin. And Kevin is a gentleman, 50 years of age, who was a PR executive that was dissatisfied with his current high-paying ad firm job. He had kids heading into college and was just tired of always missing significant time with his family. So that was one example that we spoke about. The second client we highlight is John. And John was nearing retirement age and was concerned that his Social Security and pension was going to dry up on him. His desire was to travel more with his wife once he retired, but was concerned that he wouldn't be able to do so with his typical paycheck. Next was Beth. And Beth is a corporate executive who made great money, but felt that she saw more of the inside of an airport than her own family. And then there was Doug. So Doug is 28 years old and was already in debt due to student loans, which he thought was going to pay off in the long run. But in the last 2 years, he's already had to change jobs 3 times. And then the last client we speak about is Emily. And Emily is a single mom who gives 100% of her energy to her job so she can support her family, but is feeling like that's at the expense of being able to actually watch her kids grow up. So if you can relate to any of those individuals, just know they all went through coaching and benefited greatly from that experience.
Yeah, no, I just want to encourage people to actually read those, because the stories, you gave the lead up of the tension, and then the victory at the end is so cool. So really, if you haven't gotten this book, please pick it up and listen to and read these stories, because the success on the end is really beautiful. Tamara, I will let you pick up.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I agree with you 100%. As you read these stories, you'll be able to relate to one person or another, or maybe a combination of all of them. And then I also just want to highlight, we've had the great fortune of having podcasts with some of our clients, people who made the transition. And there's one story in particular, this high school graduate who, was facing was kind of contemplating what he was going to do with the rest of his life. So he really thought about, what is most important to him? How can he build wealth and equity? And he made the transition at that early age. And he's a entrepreneur now. He's a business owner. He's an employer. And it's just so amazing to see that age doesn't define you. So, I mean, if somebody who's barely graduated high school can do it, you're certainly not too young. And then, of course, we have stories out there of people who are on the second or the third or maybe, the fourth career act. And it shows you that you're never too old. So if you want to listen to some podcasts of real life stories, I would definitely encourage you to check that out also.
That's great.
Great point, T.
Something throughout all of those stories, Marissa, as you were explaining them, that thread is freedom. And we use that word a lot on this podcast, but there's a reason why. It's because the biggest pain point that I'm listening to as I'm hearing those examples is people just want freedom. And freedom looks different for every person. But at the end of the day, the goal is, to not live in an airport, or the goal is to be able to have the freedom to actually live their life of retirement and know that they have enough money. And so I think that's what's so beautiful about this, and about what you guys do, is you give people hope that there is freedom, and to know that freedom can look different specifically for who you are and your specific goals and your specific values.
Absolutely. Yep, that's absolutely it.
Well, something I also love hearing these stories, because it reminds us, you've mentioned this a couple times, it is never too late, or it is never too early to begin living the life that you've always wanted, with purpose and fulfillment and freedom. And in this book, you talk about something called your primary aim. I would love for you guys to explain a little bit about that. What is primary aim, and how do we know what this is?
Yeah, that's interesting. Your primary aim is your innermost driving force. It gives you a sense of direction. It gives you purpose. If you feel fulfilled and you live life with purpose, you actually have found your primary aim. But as we've been working with individuals and as we do some soul searching, we have found that the vast majority of individuals aren't in touch with their primary aim. It is there within all of us, but many of us haven't taken the time to actually identify what it is. So, why is that? Maybe some of us are even scared that if we were to discover it, that we would be obligated to ourselves and feel compelled to execute on it. So, the interesting thing about your primary aim is it's not a matter of invention. It really is a matter of discovery. You don't create it. You already have it. It exists within you, but you just need to uncover it. And look, sometimes I think it's tempting to look for answers and solutions and direction outside of ourselves, like finding that perfect job, finding that perfect business, thinking, oh my goodness, if I only had more money, then I could do X, Y, and Z. But like we said before, those are all vehicles to get you to where you want to go. They're the vehicles to your dream, not necessarily the dream. So it's important important that you get in tune with your primary aim first and foremost. Otherwise, you're just randomly picking vehicles, hoping that maybe it will check a box or fill a void or, do something. But trust me, none of us are immune to that. It is so tempting to look at what others are doing, trying to retrofit your winning formula onto my life and feeling like it never quite seems to fit. It's not quite right. And if that is the case, it means that you have not felt or found your primary aim yet. You will know that you have found it when you feel most satisfied, when you feel very accomplished, and when you feel like you're really in tune with whom you were meant to be. And what I find then, when you're in tune with who you're meant to be, you have the ability to hone your skills and honor your purpose. And it's almost like magic. It seems like then the vehicles that can support your life's vision appear. They were always there. You just maybe weren't open to realizing it or seeing how they can actually serve your life's purpose. So I know it's a little bit of a long-winded answer, and the book does a much better job of explaining it. But in essence, that is what your primary aim is about.
Well, I think you did a great explainer of what that is. And it's invigorating to hear that. I think you mentioned something in your answer that is really important to touch on, how we put on essentially other people's roads to discovery. We see somebody else and it's like, oh, well, let me just try to adopt that as my own. And I think instantly it's like you watch your parents or you watch your peers, and then you try to emulate and follow their steps to success. And then you, as you mentioned, you feel disjointed, that something's missing, that things are not aligned. And so I think that's so important, because we follow in the footsteps of those who have gone before us oftentimes. And we've said, okay, well, they got success that way, and so I guess I got to follow that roadmap. But then if you don't know even what, again, to your point, what your primary aim is, you can follow that step. Maybe you can even become successful, but then you can feel so unfulfilled and misaligned with actually what is driving you. So let's pick up there. I would love, now that we know what the primary aim is, what are the steps to uncovering what that primary aim is in our specific lives?
Courtney, I'm going to highlight 5. So let's
Great.
start with number 1, and that is to identify what you don't want. So begin by creating a list of what you don't want any longer in your life. And then once you've done that, read through that list and be aware of the feelings that each specific item brings up. And then circle the ones that trigger the strongest negative emotions, because those are going to be ones that you really want to narrow in on and be aware of. On the opposite side, number 2, recognize what you do want. Write down all the things that you do want in your life, but stay away from the material things and money, and instead focus on the non-tangible items. And again, circle the ones that bring you the strongest feelings of happiness. Number 3, prioritize and break barriers. So with your new list of the most important items in your life, brainstorm the barriers that can get in the way of achieving them. Jot them down next to each so that you can better visualize and prioritize how you're going to achieve them. Number 4, and this one might sound a little weird, but write your eulogy. And that may feel really strange at first, because you do want to think of that far off day in your future when you're gone and all of your friends and family are assembled at your memorial. What do you want your eulogy to say? What do you wish others will remember you by? And then the last one, number 5, is to assemble your primary aim. So write a statement of the essence of your primary aim. This should be a single sentence that describes what you want your life to be like. It should make you feel energized, enthusiastic, and most of all, committed.
That's great. Being able to condense something down into a single sentence, it serves so many purposes, but one, memorizing. Tamara, you're like the genius of memorization. You put sticky notes everywhere, and then you can pull out any quote from history's past. But in that same sentiment, like, it becomes a piece of who you are, right? Like, your number 5, I think, is really important to really ingrain it into you, memorize it, put it on the tablet of your heart. So I love that idea. If anything, I'm thinking, okay, wow. Well, one, I haven't written a eulogy, and that is, you see stuff online about this, of how do you want to be remembered, and the things that we are doing right now oftentimes do not reflect like the most important values that we really want. And so I think that's really important. And if anything, we need to rewind and listen to those 5 that you just listed and spend some time there, right? Like, let's not rush through that, you know?
No, not at all. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know in this book you list 44 questions that can help stimulate your thinking about your primary aim. We would need literally an entire episode to go through all of those questions. They're fantastic questions. And if you don't have the book, you need to get it because all of the questions are there and they are insightful. But I would love for you both to pick maybe your top 3 that really stand out to you that you would want listeners to know today.
Yeah, it's true. There are many questions, and we probably could come up with even more variations than just the 44. And I find that it's really hard to pick just 3 or 4, but I'll preface it with this. You know, before you look at any of the question, it's like so much in life. You get out of it what you put into it. So you could gloss over these questions and be like, yeah, this one doesn't speak to me. Or you could choose to maybe focus in on, like you said, 3 or 4, and really think about your thinking, deeply reflect on it, and be honest with yourself. So when you do that, you'll really find that these questions morph into something bigger, maybe even something bigger than yourself. It will bring out thoughts that you haven't had in a long time, or things that you've never even thought about before. So I find that even when I go back to these questions, different ones jump out at me at different times. And so for today, I'll just pick the 3 or 4 that jumped out at me in the moment. So one of them is, of all the things that you've done in your life, what has given you the most satisfaction or pleasure? I find that as I think about this question, depending on when you ask me, the answer keeps on changing because I keep on trying new things. I keep on doing new things. So it reminds me that life is not static, that it's ever evolving. And how exciting is that? Or, if you have a hard time answering it, maybe you should try new things. Maybe, you're just going through the motions and, you're stuck on that hamster wheel and you're not living that life with intent. Like you said, you're busy doing things, but is it in tune with your primary aim? Number 2, I love the question, if you no longer had to work, what would you do? How would you spend your time and with whom? I love that one because it always makes me think about a conversation my dad had with me so many times. He said, Tamara, the day you don't have to work for a living anymore, the day that becomes optional, you were talking about freedom, right? That is real freedom, knowing where, or having the option to choose if I work, where I work, how long I work, right? So that is freedom. So what would you do if working was optional, if you get to work as opposed to having to work, right? Some people may say, well, I would choose not to work. Most people I heard of who are in that situation says, yeah, that gets old really fast after maybe a week or 2 or a month or 2 or maybe a year or 2. And then you feel like there has to be more to life. So I love that question. Another one of my favorites, and I'll add 2 more and then I'll promise Marissa to give her a chance too. The other one that stood out to me just recently again is, what is missing from my life? When you find yourself wishing for something, what is it? And I think we should pay close attention because that may be an indicator of some voids that we have. And I think it's an opportunity to focus on the things that are more meaningful in our lives. And lastly, the one that I love so much is, what motivates you to perform above and beyond the call of duty? I love this one because rather than just going through the motions and fooling myself by keeping busy and thinking, okay, I must be doing important work, it really gets me to think about, what am I doing when I'm in the zone? Why am I doing it? What is motivating me? And who am I doing it for? So imagine if you did all of this for all 44 questions, interesting answers may start rising to the top.
That's great. Well, Marissa, I can't wait to hear your questions. What it's doing, as you were saying this, is like, it is truly creating new neural pathways in a sense. Like, if you haven't thought about something, your brain is now opening itself up to imagine different things. And so, and that, I feel like it just gave a small little glimpse. Those questions gave a small little glimpse of what it is like working with a coach, knowing that those questions are times 100 in the mind-blowing expansion thinking about things that you never have before, partnering with somebody who's able to ask not only those questions, but questions specifically catered to you as an individual, somebody that they've walked alongside for, however many weeks or months or years. And so I think that's so great. I mean, I would love to be a fly on the wall for a coaching session that you would do, Tamara, and just listen and see the things that you pull out individually from people. I think that would be really fun.
And of course, as you're talking like that, a quote comes to mind. I forget
Of course
who gets
it does.
credit for it. But, it makes me think about, in order to have what you've never had before, you have to do things that you've never done before, right? So it is going to take you out of your comfort zone. But the awesome thing about this is just because it's out of your comfort zone doesn't mean that it's bad or that it's risky. If we can change our mindset and saying, oh my gosh, I should stay away from it, and say, this is the best adventure of my life. I just feel uncomfortable because I've never done it before. But in order for me to change or have some meaningful change in my life, I need to do new things and different things. And I always say to people, if you didn't have sweaty palms, I'd have to check your pulse, right? Because that would mean you're probably not alive. So it's normal to feel a little anxious or have some trepidation. But what a wonderful accomplishment when you're actually muster up the courage to do something new, and now you get to live the life of your dreams.
Yes, and our body is designed to keep us safe. And sometimes safety is not good. It wants to keep us in our bubble of self-preservation. And there is good to that, right? If you see a bear, your body's going to go, no, we out. But in certain situations like this, where you're trying to take a step and then you start to feel trepidation or you start to feel anxious. And if you instantly thought, this must not be the right thing because I'm feeling these things, to your point, Tamara, you are going to miss out on life, not just a piece of life, but life, and life abundantly. So I think that's so important that you mentioned that. And for us to say, comfort can be good. Comfort is there for a reason, but discomfort is necessary in order for us to take steps that we have so desperately desired in ourselves. And then that builds confidence once we actually take the steps and we jump into the things that are super scary and we realize what we're capable of. Then it's just a launching pad. The sky is the limit. Like that, you are unstoppable at that point.
So true. So true.
Okay, Marissa, I cannot wait
Okay.
to hear your questions. What do you got for us?
Okay, this is going to be tough because I love the questions that T just mentioned, and I'm drawn to them as well. But I do have three more that I also love. So the first one that I'll highlight is, what would you like to be able to say about your life after it's too late to do anything about it? And I love this one because you always hear the phrase, right? You never want to look back and think about what if, or you don't want to have any regrets. So for that, it's like, don't wait, right? Just take the time to think about it now so that you can start to take action today and not have to look back years from now and think like, oh, what if, or if I just took action. So love that question. The second one that I really love is, what would your life look like if failure was not an option? And I think this one is great because oftentimes people don't give themselves permission to dream because the idea of failing really plagues their mind and holds them back. So I encourage you to dream big as if failure was not an option. And I really think it could just open up the way you're thinking about your future and what can be next for you. And then the third one is, do you close yourself to possibilities just because you've never considered them before, right? You don't know what you don't know. So why limit yourself to anything just because it may be something that you haven't heard of before or even considered? Just remember to keep an open mind and to always be curious. So those are the other three that I love, in addition to the great ones that T mentioned earlier too.
Gosh, I love that. I will be good and not continue to expand on all of those because I know our time is precious, but I could because those are really great questions. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Well, I know that these last 7 episodes have proven that no matter where you are, no matter the age, no matter the occupation, no matter the mindset, growth is a never-ending journey. And it's a journey that we three know, and I hope that by now y'all know, is worth taking. I would love for both you, Tamara and Marissa, I would love for you to share a final story that really encapsulates this entire journey listeners have been on for the past 7 episodes.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to reference a story from the book. And through the podcast series, we've just been giving little teasers, but I'm actually going to read this one directly from the book because I want to cue this one up. And then I know T wants to kind of wrap up the story thereafter. So if it's okay, let me read this to you, and I
Yes.
promise it'll only take a few seconds. Okay, so towards the end of the book, here's the story that we present. Everything was fine until it wasn't. Imagine boarding a plane, wearing your flip-flops after a trip to the Bahamas. Although you had an amazing time, part of you is excited to go home and get back to life as normal. 1 minute, the pilot said he wasn't feeling well, and the next, he slumped over the controls of the single-engine plane, sending it into a nosedive. Not what you were expecting, so what do? What does anyone do in an unplanned event like this? This was the exact scenario Darren Harrison and one other passenger experienced in the Cessna 208. According to NBC News, despite having no flying experience, Harrison climbed over 3 rows of seats into the cockpit, moved the pilot out of his seat, and scrambled to put on a pair of headphones and make contact with air traffic control, all as the plane was heading down. His audio from a call he made to air traffic control at Fort Pierce Tower said it all. I've got a serious situation here. My pilot has gone incoherent. I have no idea how to fly the airplane. I'm going to hand it over to T, but I think this story is so reflective to a lot of the journey that we've been talking about in life, and looking towards the future and what your career 2.0 can be, right? Very serious situation, but I think the actions and next steps can make all the world of difference. So T, I'll let you kind of sum it up from here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I mean, I think that's an incredible story, and I can't even imagine, having to be faced with that situation. But I am so incredibly proud of how that individual responded. And, as I reflect on life, I think, we know from experience that life often interrupts well-laid plans. How many of us are doing exactly what we went to school for? How many of us are doing what we thought we'd be doing today, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years ago, right? Somehow life has a way of having a different plan. I mean, that day, Harrison had no plan to become a pilot, was not on his bucket list, not anything he aspired to do. He was quite comfortable being a passenger that day. But thankfully, he recognized what was happening, and he was open to coaching, and through a miracle, he was able to land the plane safely. So this is a metaphor for our life. Maybe people before listening to our podcast were going through life on autopilot. Maybe they were oblivious to some of those new adventures, Courtney, you and I were just talking about, right? What may be possible. Maybe some people were quite comfortable with being an employee, or I have to think if anybody tunes into the Your Career Revolution podcast, maybe they were not so content, but they didn't know what else to do, right? They were becoming increasingly agitated by the fact that they're working on someone else's dream. Somebody else gets to dictate when they have to work, where they have to work, how long they have to work, what their income is going to be. And they're just getting, thinking there has to be a better way. And, oh, by the way, I'm working so hard, not only working on somebody else's dream, but they're the ones building wealth and equity, right? So the truth is, we are all pilots of our own planes. We have the responsibility to land our own planes safely. But what I love about the story is, make no mistake, no one needs to fly solo, right? Just like Harrison discovered that a confident coach is an invaluable asset, hopefully Marissa, Courtney, myself, and the rest of the Entrepreneur Source coaches have opened up your mind to what is possible. Creating your new future is a creative and a collaborative process. You absolutely don't need to go on this journey alone. A coach can help. I know for me, that has made all the difference in my life. Sometimes I wasn't that coachable, but there were days that my coach believed in my dreams and my possibilities, honestly, more than I did myself. And because they believed, I started to tap into that borrowed belief, like, well, if they think I can, maybe I can. I felt like an imposter. I felt like maybe I don't deserve it. But now, the fact that I get to live my version of the American dream, I feel it's our time to pay it forward, to give you the hope and the inspiration that you too, regardless of how young, how old, how desperate your situation seems, we can go on this journey together and be insanely curious about what the future may hold. Look, if you're not happy with the trajectory of your career and it makes you feel like you want to revolt, remember, you don't need to have all the answers right now. Give yourself permission to dream. And what does the book say? Let's reimagine and reclaim the life of your dreams.
Beautifully said. We are
Mm.
all pilots in our own story. You listening right now, you are the pilot in your own story. I loved that story. I knew, I was like, we have to put that story in this because it really does, it does just encapsulate this beautiful picture of the unexpected, but then the confidence to know, okay, I'm being redirected and it's going to be okay. No, it's going to be more than okay. It's going to be a success story that's going to blow my mind and everybody else's mind around me. So, ladies, I can't thank you enough for what you guys do for countless people's lives, but also for my life the past 7 episodes of just learning and growing, and I know for all the listeners who have been inspired by you both. So thank you both so much for what you've brought to the table, your knowledge, your wisdom, and your inspiration.
Wow, this
Absolutely.
has
It
been
is our
amazing.
pleasure.
Yeah.
But Courtney, like we said, this is not the end. This is just the beginning. This is just
Yes.
scratching the surface of what is possible. So, yeah, we
Yeah.
invite everybody to embark on this journey. So, thank you guys so much for listening. And thank you for taking the time to invest in yourself and think about your thinking.
Yeah. Ditto. This has
Yeah.
been amazing, Courtney. Thank you so much.
Well, this might be the final episode of this particular podcast, but we have more podcasts that you can dive into today, right now, so you can continue listening to real life people like yourself share their stories of the journey to discovery. Just go to theentrepreneurssource.com/podcasts to start listening today. And as always, the link is in today's show notes. All right, guys, go pilot your plane. We believe in you, and we are here ready to walk alongside you every step of the way as you begin your new journey. The journey that has been inside of you all along and is waiting to be unleashed. Go pilot your plane. And never forget, keep an open mind and always remember what's possible.